Hello, welcome back to another episode of Cozypreneur. So, this episode is going to be for you if you are struggling to figure out how much of you to share online. Maybe you want a personal brand, but you feel a little uncomfortable when it comes to sharing what's actually going on in your life. So, let's break that down because your personal brand doesn't have to be your whole identity. It doesn't have to be your journal. It's not your therapy session. It's not even brunch with your besties. You don't have to actually tell people what your coffee order is unless you are literally selling coffee. A strong brand personality is about building a strategic representation of who you are, and it's built to highlight your expertise and your values and your perspective in a way that's going to build trust and help you sign more clients way more than sharing about your dating life or what coffee order you're having. So you don't need to trauma dump, you don't need to overshare, but if your message is clear and consistent and connects with your people, that is the sweet spot. So let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of the Cozypreneur podcast. If this is your first time listening, Cozypreneur is all about helping you make money and work with the dreamiest of clients. So grab your beverage, get your cozy socks on, and let's dive in. I actually got the idea for this episode because I did a training inside of a membership, and this was one of the main things that we ended up talking about when it was time for questions, because there's this idea that you have to share all of the parts of yourself online in order to be authentic. And I have definitely struggled with this in the past where I've kind of felt the same way. Like I have to share about, my cats and my life and what's going on behind the scenes. But there's also a part of me that's like, why do you need to know that? Because at the end of the day, I'm here to help you write really great marketing. I'm not really here to find besties to go out on Friday night with. And not to say that I don't build relationships with my clients, with my referral partners, with my network. I do build those relationships with people, but I don't necessarily need to be sharing so much online. And so I think that that's really where a lot of people struggle, because you're being told that you need to share all of these parts of yourself to build trust with people, so people like you. And liking you isn't enough to actually get conversions. And so when you're thinking about your personal brand, think about something that's curated, right? It's not you, it's a representation of you. It's kind of like a character. And so when you think about big brands like Ralph Lauren, right? What do you actually know about Ralph Lauren, the person? Probably nothing. You know about the brand, the clothes that go behind it. And so that's really what I want you to think about when you're thinking about your own personal brand is hey, you wouldn't show up to a job interview and be like, hey, here's all of my insecurities and here's all of my trauma. Buy my thing. Hire me for your job. But that is what is happening on social media right now. I think that where people are getting mixed up, right, is there's this whole idea of know, like, and trust, right? And I haven't heard it so much recently, but I heard it a lot when I first entered the online space. Yes, you want to build know, like, and trust. That's what's going to drive sales, because people, one, have to know who you are, right? That's the visibility piece. If they don't know who you are, they're not going to buy from you. It's impossible. Then you have the like piece. This is the nurturing piece. So are you building those relationships? Are you showing that you're the expert? Are you showing that you can solve their problems? That's the trust piece. And then the like piece, you don't have to necessarily be hey, here's what I did this weekend to build that like piece. I think for me personally, that like piece comes out of values, and it comes from finding people that want to work in similar ways as me. And I think when I show up and I'm talking about, messaging and copywriting and marketing, people like me anyways, and I'm not oversharing because they see that I do things in a certain way, and they like that I do things in a certain way that's transparent and honest and communicative, right? And so think about that. How can you show your values in that way? And not just that you're a relatable person, because once people talk to you, they'll see that you're a relatable person. You don't need to be screaming I'm relatable from the top of my lungs on social media. So really grounding into this idea that your expertise and your values, that's what's going to give the clarity. That's what's going to get people to know and like you and trust you. And it's really not because you shared your lunch or the kind of bread that you're making. It's funny because recording this episode, I'm like, wow, I have so many examples. And just as we were talking about this inside that membership training, somebody pulled up their Facebook feed and it's literally like somebody in a face mask and being like, hey, share your behind the scenes so that people will buy from you. And it's like, nobody needs to see your skincare routine. Like, if you want to share it, sure, but is it helping you make sales? Probably not. So I think that some of the issues that come up with this is you have this idea of like the parasocial relationship, right? Where people get to know you, but you don't actually know them. And if you're like trauma dumping and all of this stuff, they're getting to know you on a very like close, intimate level, but you don't actually know them. So it's not really a real relationship. And so I think sometimes people overshare because they want to be really authentic, but then like without really considering like what's the boundary here, right? Like how much do I actually want to share and how much do I need to share? And what actually feels good to me? Like, sure, if you are going for like influencer marketing and you want to show off all of the products that you use and you want to build yourself as a brand that way, sure. But if you are selling a service, you don't need to be doing all that stuff unless you want to. If you want to, like, awesome, cool, go for it. But you don't have to. You don't have to like use your personal tragedies to have effective marketing. You don't need to talk about the bad shit that you went through to like create this vulnerability that other people like latch onto. Like, that's not super healthy either. So instead of trauma dumping, instead of sharing your skincare routine, instead of, I'm trying to think of what else I have seen. Actually, if you're listening to this, send me an email or message me. What are some crazy like things that you've seen online that have been supposed to be like for authenticity and to build know, like, and trust, to build relationships with people, but you're actually like, why are you sharing this? But what do you actually share instead? So what you can share is your opinions, right? You're the expert on the market. Just like this episode, right? Like, this is something that I've seen. This is something that I've noticed. This is a gap that I'm noticing. So I'm talking about it on this podcast episode, but it's things that I have experienced in real conversations with people in my network, with the people that I'm working with. And so thinking about what are some of those things that are happening in your day-to-day work that you can bring up as they relate to your offer, right? So maybe not your skincare routine, maybe not, what you did with your kids this vacation, but what have you learned about your framework? Why do you do things in that certain way? How are you working behind the scenes, right? And so doing things like this, it shows more your values and how you operate and what matters to you. And it's going to go a much longer way than showing your morning routine every morning, right? And so I think when you're thinking about building trust, it really is like, it's not about oversharing. It's not about like this like perceived vulnerability. And if you were thinking about like, what does fake vulnerability actually look like? When you look at the big speakers on MLM circuits and you can see that they cry at the same exact time every time they give the same speech, like at the 5-minute mark, because it is fake, right? Maybe they have this story, but they can't be that emotionally connected to it because they're crying at the same 5-minute mark every single time. Like, it's rehearsed, but they're using that to make sales, right? They're using that to make sales because people emotionally connect to it and they get hooked, right? Like, they're invested in it. And so that's something to think about too, is like, is that the approach that you want to take in your business by like oversharing and giving all of that vulnerability in exchange for clients, right? Or do you want to show up where you can be consistent, you clearly communicate what it is and how you help people, and just by doing what you say you'll do, like, it's not that complicated. It's really about showing people how you can help them. And then it doesn't also mean that you have to be super professional, right? If it is your personal brand, like, you can be warm, you can be funny, you can be real. You don't have to show up and act like the internet is your therapist or your best friend. Like, you can still show parts of yourself without showing all of yourself. And so that's for you, like as a business owner, if you have a personal brand, like how much do I want to share? Where is this boundary? What do I feel comfortable sharing? And what's going to actually be most effective for my business, right? Like a personal brand, it's a brand, like it's not a person. And it's just like any other brand, right? They're telling a story, they're selling a product. You can do that. You can still be likable without trying too hard to be likable. Like you can still be likable without being performative and trauma dumping. You can still be seen as an expert without being emotionally manipulative or like trying to build this like celebrity parasocial relationship where people know you but you don't know them. Like you don't have to do that. You can just build actual relationships with people. And I think like another thing that came up as I'm wrapping this up is, people are saying, yeah, but it's a character. But what about like those actual relationships with people? And it's like, if you have your visual representation of yourself, if you have your personal brand, right, your representation of yourself online, but you're actually building relationships, real relationships with people, not these like fake relationships where people know you, but you don't know them. If you're actually building deep relationships with people, it's not fake. It's just a way of staying top of mind. And then when you have those real relationships with people, that's like really your chance to kind of dig deep and go vulnerable if you want, or share, what's going on in your life. Like, it's not that I don't share about myself. It's that I share about myself when I'm on one-on-one Zooms with people, right? I'm asking them about their weekend, about what's going on this week, about what they're working on. I go out to coffee with local business owners and I ask them what's going on. The space for relationships is there, but it doesn't mean that you have to do it so front facing and so open to everybody. So all of that being said, your personal brand is a reflection of your values and your expertise, but it is not you. It is not your journal. It is not your therapy session. It is about how you help people. You can build real human connections without sacrificing your boundaries or sharing more than you want to share. So all of that being said, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Cozypreneur. If you want to talk more about this, shoot me an email, send me a message. I love to hear from you. And don't forget to rate, review, and like this podcast if you enjoyed it. It really helps us grow. And if you want some support with your messaging and copywriting, don't forget to check out Copy Classroom. Until next time, thank you.